All right, we are live. Welcome to my very first live interview on the new YouTube live series. So, as some of you guys know, most of my content on this channel is very tutorial focused, but I wanted to kind of have a way to connect with you, the viewer, and connect with other experts in the business and entrepreneurship space. So I'm super excited. I think that these interviews are going to be really fun. They're going to be insightful and packed with golden nuggets of helpful information and inspire to help you grow your online business in a way that feels good for you. Because honestly, that's just what I care a lot about in the online business space. So today's topic is going to be all about simplifying your online business marketing. So we're going to talk about how to market your business, where to focus when marketing, and all of that good stuff with one of my really good friends and a marketing genius, Miranda Rodriguez. But before we get into the interview, I do want to shout out our sponsor. So, the Curiously Guided Podcast, the podcast for intuitive business owners and curious minds. If you like this interview style and if you like me hosting this interview, then you are going to love the conversations that we have over on Curiously Guided. So, Curiously Guided is kind of where me and my co host, Shay, have cool conversations with cool people doing things differently in the online business space. So, we really like to combine strategy and energetics, and we kind of like to put a modern twist on business and spirituality. So head over to mariahmagazine.com/CG to learn more or search Curiously Guided on your favorite listening platform. So I do have some of these. What do we got? Okay, yeah. My first time using the streaming platform, and I'm trying to get familiar with all of the cool banners that we have here. So there's the URL for listening to Curiously Guided. Like I said, mariahmagazine.com/CG. But enough of me introing and talking. Our guest today, Miranda Rodriguez, she's actually been a guest on the Curiously Guided podcast, but Miranda is a marketing consultant over at Marketing for the Uninhibited, over at marketinguninhibited.com. I'm glad that I said all of that correctly. Okay, so she's currently backstage. Let me click around here and bring her onto the stream. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. So I feel like I really didn't give people too much of your background. So you just want to catch people up. Like, we know that you do marketing because of the title of this interview, but how do you typically support people?
Yes. So as a marketing consultant and coach for product-based business owners and specialty service providers, that looks like a variety of things, really depending on the day. But ultimately, I help business owners navigate transitioning from where they are to that next big thing. So sometimes the next big thing is just like a pivot, or sometimes it's scaling back the amount of time they're spending in the business. Whatever that looks like to them, I help them do that through custom marketing strategies, plans, and one-on-one coaching and workshops.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome, because marketing is it's such a broad piece. Can we break down like what is marketing? Like, obviously we throw the word around and it feels obvious when we talk about it. It's like, oh, we own a business, so like obviously we're marketing. But like, can we give it a definition, or just like, how do you explain marketing to people? Maybe when they're feeling overwhelmed too, because like marketing feels intense.
Totally. So marketing is overwhelming, and especially in the online space, where I feel like everyone is an online marketer. And so then it's hard to identify like, well, which marketer do I need right now? Which marketing helps? So I break it down two ways for my clients. Number one, there's a definition from Seth Godin that I really like. And he defines marketing as change. It's just a change that you want to see in your community, with the audience that you work with, in the industry that you work within. So you get to define change, but really marketing is change. The other way I define it to my customers, and this is my favorite, especially in the entrepreneurial world, is just connection. So much of marketing boils down to making connection with your target audience. And I think, especially because of the way so much of business went online during the pandemic, or the P word, I don't want to get us censored on here.
You're good.
I have to remember. But anyway, during the panini, so much of it was online, and I feel like that was the big void, was the disconnect that we were feeling from other individuals. And so if you remind yourself often that you're just trying to connect with one other person, you don't need to broadcast to the entire world what you have to do. You just need to connect with one more person, and then one more person after that. And I have found that really takes the pressure off of marketing and showing up online, and just remembering that your community doesn't have to be huge in order for you to have an impact or for it to impact your income. So just taking the pressure off of it having to be this big overwhelming thing.
Yeah, I think that perspective shift was really helpful for me because, to be honest, like, just in my scenario, I've never really worked in like a corporate setting. So I started my business when I was 22, and I kind of jumped into this world and figured everything out on my own. So I never thought that I understood marketing. Like, I always
Mhm.
thought that it's like I can't help people market because I don't know how to market. But like, I have a successful business. So obviously I'm doing marketing very
Yes.
well. But I think the thing is, like, when we think about marketing, we think of corporate style marketing.
Mhm.
We think of, oh, you need to have like this marketing plan with 27 legs that's like
Mhm.
super complex and super overwhelming with like the KPIs and the ROIs and like the all of these words. When really, like you said, if we break down marketing to what it is, and it's like simplistic form,
Mhm.
it's connection.
Mhm.
And when you look at it that way, I feel like A, it takes all of the pressure off.
Yeah.
And B, it's like, oh, so I just get to like choose how, why, where, and when, like, I get to connect with my people.
Right.
How
Totally.
empowering as a business owner.
Yes, and then when it comes to social media, those connection points, oftentimes the deepest connection points are not related directly to the business talking points. And so it's like when you're showing up authentically as yourself. So I spoke with I had a consultation with someone, and she makes these kind of like homeschool DIY sensory play kits for kids, and she ships them to people. So it's like a monthly subscription box. You get a new kit for your child. And she was talking about how, like, she was incorporating her daughter reading into her marketing, and then she started like telling me all about the literature that she's reading as a single mom, an adult, a widow. And she, like, her energy just shifted around it, and she said, do you
Mm.
think it would be okay if I shared that? And I was like, yes, that's what we need more of, because you are lighting up, like, as a single mom of a young child, I'm sure she gets her fill of talking about kids stuff all day long. And that's also
Mhm.
the job that she's created for herself. And so, what opportunity there is there to connect with parents on things that parents want to read, that the moms want to read. And so she was like, but how does this relate to my business? And it's not directly related, but it relates to her customer audience, and into to building that connection and to deepening that relationship with them, where they feel like they get to know her, and then they build trust with her, and then that trust transfers to the business and the transactions that you see between the audience and the business.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because at the time that we're doing this interview, Threads
Mhm.
came into the social media world by storm for a hot minute. And I jumped on. I was like, you know what? I'm curious. I'm just curious about how
Mhm.
all of this is. And what people loved about Threads was that, like, it's a way for you to like authentically connect,
Mhm.
but it's like, we could have been authentically connecting on any other social media platform. It doesn't like take a brand new platform in order to open that door. And there's been talk about that. And that's a conversation that we could go down in like a completely different rabbit hole. But I think basically what people were realizing was like, wait, so
Mhm.
people care about like me and like my thoughts and my perspective and like who I am and how I operate. And I
Mhm.
think that that's so important. And like, why, if we can start connecting marketing to the word connection,
Yeah.
I just think that it makes more sense. And then sales and marketing your business and visibility and all of that fun stuff becomes so much easier. Like, on Instagram, I shared on Instagram stories. I have a laptop and it's like 7 years old. And I shared that it's like it's seen better days and now it is basically a desktop because I
Mhm.
can't use it without having it being plugged in to the
Yes.
wall. Okay. So like
Uh-huh.
I talked about that. That had nothing related to SEO, nothing related to marketing, nothing related to YouTube, like nothing related to that. It was just a connection point. And I got so many
Mhm.
DMs being like, oh my God, that happened to mine too. Like, LOL, that sucks. Like all of this stuff. But that was just creating a connection point. And so then I'm having conversations in the DMs, or it opens up the door to building a relationship with your clients and your customers, even if they don't buy from you right now, even if they never buy from you. Like, I think that we also have to stop looking at marketing as like this end goal to get somebody to like give us money. Like,
Right.
marketing is so much deeper than that. And I think that putting on like that, oh, I need to market in order to make money, which obviously we're not a business if we don't make money, but we have to better balance and like
Mhm.
stop constricting and like having all of these intense expectations with our marketing, because I feel like that sucks the fun out of it.
Yes, entirely, and if you're not having fun with it, then people feel that, and why are they going to pay attention to something if that person looks miserable, or you can tell that there's a difference between, like, looking maybe hesitant or maybe just lacking a little bit of confidence, but still showing up and bringing that energy, right, of trying to connect or with the intention of connecting, but then of just, like, feeling like you're forcing yourself to show up, and so I think something the story I tell well, something I want to point out is that marketing and sales are two different things. And so the point
Mm.
of marketing is to connect with your audience and then to further them down your pipeline or your journey or your sales funnel, whatever you want to call it, into a sales transaction or a sales conversation. And then that's where you have the opportunity to sell them on something and to really like give them the opportunity to pay you.
That's
But
a good
going,
differentiation. Like, just
yeah,
like making them two separate things, because if we
yeah,
bring it back to the corporate world, they are two different things.
totally. They're two different departments.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up.
So, and I think that's where people start to put that pressure on themselves. And it's
Mm.
a good analogy here is like dating, and people say it all the time, but like kind of if you think about dating and you're making initial contact with someone like on a dating app and you're just exchanging messages, your intention in that moment is not to marry them. Like maybe, I don't know, but like really you're just getting to know them. It's connecting. Do we have connection points? Would this be like, do we want to go on a first date, right? It's just moving to the next step. Are we going to take this offline to a restaurant or whatever? And then from there, it's just the next step. And so if you think about marketing, like what is the next step that you want your customer to do with you? What is the next step in your relationship together in order to build trust and to continue getting to know each other and understand if this would be a right fit? So many people are trying to force things that are not a right fit or they don't know yet, right? And I think this comes from a place of sometimes desperation. Like in the summer months, we're seeing a summer slowdown, as usually happens outside of the past few years because people were home more, and that's normal. And so really understanding your target audience and meeting them where they are versus where you need them to be for your own goals, I think there's a connection point there. And so there was one example I wanted to give about connection where it's not directly related to business. Is like I talk about my dog all the time. We have a Doberman. He's on my social media. You know, he's just like part of my content. And last summer, I went to a farmer's market and there was a local maker there that I recognized. You know, we follow each other on social media, but we'd never interacted before. And I took my dog and my stepdaughter over to her booth just to like say hi. I introduced myself. I was like, I think we follow each other. You know, we know a lot of the same people. And she said, oh my gosh, I saw you walking around and I recognized Odin from across the farmer's
Oh,
market. Like she recognized my dog before she recognized me. And he has nothing to do with my business other than the fact that maybe he's like the mascot of the business. But and then from there, okay, so I bought something from her, you know, Rebel wanted to buy something, so we bought something, and then I tagged her on social media, and then we started DMing each other and became real friendly, and then that turned into a consultation, and then she had a lot of questions, and you know, she knew other people that had worked with me locally, and from there, she just signed a 10-month contract. Like she did a 3-month contract, and then she took some time off to quit her full-time job. and to bring that goal to fruition. And then when she quit, she knew she would need support. So she just re-upped and signed a 10-month contract. And the conversation starter was my dog.
Yeah. What a great story that kind of shines the light on like the marketing funnel, but like when you call it a marketing funnel, it doesn't feel human anymore.
Right.
Instead, it's like this is literally me showing up, sharing who I am and just like what I'm here to share with people. Like I'm not saying that you have to like let everybody know about like your deepest darkest secrets and like show up crying all the time. I mean cry if you want to. Whatever. But it's like it's deeper than that. It's like how can we stop looking at marketing like numbers and look at it more as people, because these are humans. And I think that like especially in the online business space, when we're seeing all the time like 10K months, 50K months and all of these wild goals, it's like we get so focused on these metrics, and like obviously tracking metrics is important, but we have to remember that each one of those numbers is an actual person. And if you just take the time to be like, you know what, like which brands, which businesses do I like connecting with? It's probably the ones that don't sound like their marketing is regurgitated BS, just like everybody else. Instead, they either bring you behind the scenes or like you feel like you know them or like all of these other pieces. But I do have a question because you mentioned something. I don't know if you mentioned networking or not, but in terms of marketing, there's just so many different ways to market your business. So like, how do we know which way is the right way to market our business? How would you kind of like walk a client along that path of just like starting to figure that out? And maybe it's just questions that you ask them or they ask themselves, or like, how do we kind of start taking that apart?
Well, one of the ways is the question that I don't know if you phrase it as a question, but really understanding as a consumer what turns you on in terms of marketing and what lights you up. And so that's one way, because then you can start to mimic that once you understand that in your own business. Like, oh, they're just bringing me behind the scenes and I feel really comfortable asking this person questions because they seem really genuine and authentic because they're taking me behind the scenes. Maybe that's something you can start to do more in your own business. And along that vein, I see so many business owners that don't do that because they feel like they are not there yet. Like they don't have the experience or they don't qualify to talk about what's going on behind their business scenes.
Or like nobody cares. It's like,
yes,
we're actually like, if I'm following you on social media, I'm like invested.
Totally. And we all get into where we kind of follow or we get invested with the same people's stories. And so that's one way, really understanding your own consumer behavior and just observing it and really like, oh, I follow this brand and I like this brand because of this, or I like this coach or whoever in the online space because of that. And then the other thing I ask them is like, how do they feel comfortable communicating? So this is an exercise I do in a lot of my workshops. I once had a client who told me she wasn't creating content like at all. And so we had a real heart-to-heart conversation about it. And she had gained some weight. And this is the other thing, like no one on your phone is noticing if you gain 10 pounds and no one cares if they do notice. Okay. So women, especially, like we just have to take that pressure off. Like no one cares. Especially, we're our own worst critics, unfortunately, but so she had gained some weight and she kept the story she was telling herself was that she had to show up on video to be relevant. But because she had gained some weight, she was feeling really insecure about showing up on video. And so I just asked her like, hey, when you talk to your paying clients, how do you talk to them? Are you emailing with them? Are you I meet all my clients on Zoom or in person. Or is it Zoom? Is it email? Blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh, on the phone. And I was like, oh, cool. So it's FaceTime. And she was like, no, I talk to them on the phone. Like we have a phone call. We don't see each other's faces.
Online business owners are literally like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
I had somebody request a phone call the other day and she was like, I'm sorry for being old school. I was like, no, I am loving this. Like I forgot how easy it can be to connect.
Yes, you could walk around in the backyard if you wanted to. It's so easy. But that right there, I was like, okay, so do you notice that even the people that are paying you don't get to see you on video? Like, you're not even comfortable in that situation. So why are you forcing yourself over here to generate free content on video? Like, you're comfortable
Ooh.
on podcasting or, reels with audio only, B-roll footage. Like, there's so many ways you can use your voice without having to be a talking head. And so I think people identifying, especially when they're need to get into creating content consistently, because you'll build the habit like a muscle, and eventually you'll break out of some of the routines that you're in. But in order to get started and to feel comfortable, or if you look at someone and you think, God, it just looks so natural to them, either they're comfortable speaking in that way, like you and I were very comfortable face to face, like we thrive on that interaction and back and forth, and
which
some
I
people
was
don't.
super resistant to
Yeah.
for literally forever. That is a conversation for a different day. But even to this day, like I start sweating before I record all of my YouTube videos. And people are like, wait, what do you mean? Like you
Yeah.
record videos all the time. And I'm literally like, no, it's still a challenge.
Yes, and I think that's a great point to bring up, is like, you have a YouTube channel, a monetized YouTube channel. Like, that is your platform outside of Instagram, and you still get sweaty before you do it,
So
and
sweaty. So
people
sweaty.
like, I was just sitting backstage listening to you talk thinking, oh, it's so easy being on the other side, because when you're interviewing people for a podcast or on, you have to be on, like you have to be the one prepared. And so I think there's so many misconceptions when it comes to what we see of people online. Like, we think it's easier for them. We think it must come naturally to them, all of these things. So if you're trying to get in the habit of creating content or just being consistent with your content, start with your own strengths and start by observing your consumer behavior. Like, what do I like? What kind of content do I enjoy? And then try to make that content and for, relevant for your own business.
Yeah, I think that's really great, is like looking at what your strengths are and using that to move forward. Because what I feel like a lot of people do is that they'll look at their competitors and they'll be like, oh, my competitors are on TikTok. I need to be on TikTok. And I'm just like, there's a million people on TikTok. It sounds awful to me. I'm not touching TikTok with a 10-foot pole, dude.
Right.
But if I made these decisions based on my competitors, I might be showing up on random platforms that don't actually align with how I want to show up. And I feel like that's really important. And it's like, also, like, do you want to show up on video? That's a really good thing. Do you like long form content? Do you like short form content? Do you prefer to be talking, or do you prefer to be writing?
Right.
And those are like the questions I feel like to start with, of just like, this is how you figure out which ways make sense. But also, me and you off camera have been talking about, what about offline? Like, how can you market your business offline? And I feel like in the online business space, obviously we're online business owners, right? Like, most of our people are worldwide, nationwide, whatever. And so because the internet is so cool, we get to connect with all of those people. But we forget how much like juice there is in like our actual local areas. And like, I know you kill the game in like your local networking community. So it's like, that's another way to figure out, like, is this a good form of marketing? But like, what would you say to somebody if they were like, networking, that sounds awful? What would you say?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, yes, sometimes it can be. But the thing is with networking, just like with different versions of content, is you just have to experiment with different groups and see what works for you. There are tons of online networking groups, which I personally find hard to sit in those groups just because I get bored sitting for that long. And, sometimes you have to listen to like 30 or 50 elevator pitches, and so
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And that can be good because you're hearing everyone's elevator pitch, and then you get an opportunity to craft your own. And so you can figure out, it helps with messaging. But networking in person, you just have to figure out what works for you. Again, and I know it's like, oh my gosh, what works for me? Which maybe that's overwhelming for some people too. And so what I did in the beginning of my business, like 5.5 years ago, I even had a different business name back then. I just put all of the local networking events on my calendar, and I just went to every single one for a month. When you're first starting out, you have more time anyway. So I did that, and I was very quickly able to cross the ones that I didn't like or I didn't resonate with or I didn't feel my clientele was a part of off the list. And then it was like, okay, one and done. And what I like to remind people is you get to go to networking. Ideally, there will be a large group of people there. You can introduce yourself to a couple people. And if you're not feeling it, you can leave. Like you could even Irish goodbye. You could go to the bathroom and never come back. Like, it's not, I think, again, maybe it's a corporate mentality or maybe it's like a school mentality. I don't know where this idea comes from that, oh, we're going to go and we're going to have to stay the whole time and we have to show up on time. And it's like so much of networking is so flexible because people are coming in between work, after work, before they go home to their kids, like before work, there are just so many other life factors and that it's not just for you, like that applies to everyone. And so if I have a board meeting tonight. And so that's a form of local networking for me. I was getting bored with, having a cocktail and just shooting the shoot with people. I don't want to get censored. I saw you watching me there too. Like, okay. Yeah. So, I needed something more, a little bit more challenging. And so, I reached out to some friends who are part of some local nonprofit boards and I was able to get on one of them, and so that is a way that I get to interact with, they're not all business owners, some of them are, but like business professionals and people that want to give back in my local community. And I feel like I'm doing something, not just showing up with a cocktail. And so I would say get creative. The other night I was invited to a networking event that was a pasta making class and that was super fun. And
that does sound fun.
Yeah. And then you're doing something with your hands. Again, that's not alcohol related, but you have an activity to do. And I also think like workout classes, taking your kids places, volunteering in general, there are so many creative ways. The point, again, taking it back to connection, like if you think about that as your marketing, where can you go to connect with your people and where are your people? Maybe they are in the yoga class. Maybe, for me, maybe it would be like the yoga studio owner, making a connection with them, as a small business and figuring out who's doing their marketing. And so I think just breaking ourselves out of the mold of like that all of networking is just these stuffy corporate business events. Some of it is. Totally. But a lot of it is not. And you get to decide. And then once you've decided and you go, you also get to decide when to leave.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you shared that example. And I think there's another little thread. I have my pen because I was like taking a note because I didn't want to forget this. There was another little thread there about like how important it is to test and tweak your marketing. Yes. Y'all, when we are marketing our business, I know that there is like marketing professionals and like Miranda is a marketing consultant. I'm an SEO expert. Like we have our expertise, but like a lot of marketing is testing and tweaking. It's experimenting. It's allowing yourself to take steps forward and to figure it out as you go, because every business is unique to its own thing. Like your business has your unique perspective. You uniquely help other people solve problems. And so all of this is unique and you have your own unique zone of genius. How many times can I say unique in like one sentence? But like you have your zone of genius and like how you like to show up and how you like to express yourself and all of this stuff. So it creates like this little gift that essentially that it's like this little puzzle piece here isn't meant to fit in every other puzzle. We cannot rinse and repeat and expect to have these same exact results as everybody else. Right. It's so much more nuanced than that. And I think that like for me, for example, that was a huge roadblock for me, is like all of these expectations that I was putting on myself, or I would buy some course or be in some program and I'd be like, cool, this is the answer to solve all of my problems. No, it just literally gave me a framework to then say, hey, this is the framework, take it, adios amigos, like test and tweak, and then come back if you have questions. And I think that that's so important, especially when we have so many people coming into the online space, thinking that making money and like growing a business is easy. Listen, I'm not saying that like it's the most difficult thing in the world, because the bar is lower when you start an online business, right? Versus like having a restaurant. Totally. We don't really need like capital if we're not going to have a physical business. But it's like, then it swings to the other side where it's like, you you can make $70,000 by blowing your nose. And it's like,
Yeah.
whoa. Like, no, it takes work, but it takes testing and tweaking. But that's why we hear so often, like, man, I didn't get this stuff figured out until I was 5 years in business, 6 years in business, 10 years in business, 15 years in business. When we think that the norm is like going viral and like getting results within the first month, 3 months, even the first year, when it's like, no, business and marketing especially takes time to build on itself. So the question, if you're trying to simplify this, it's like, how can you keep taking baby steps that can build on itself while doing things that you actually enjoy doing? So I do have a question in terms of like, because you work with clients with marketing. So like, what have you seen with your clients is the hardest part about marketing as a business owner?
I think the hardest part, I mean, there's the resilience, like the sheer just, you do have to stick with it over and over for all the reasons that you just listed, because it all compounds. And that doesn't mean you can't take breaks. That doesn't mean you can't take the summertime off. But really, I think the hardest part is not comparing your journey to someone else's. And we do this in several ways. One, we're first starting out, we're looking to other people maybe for inspiration or for knowledge. How did they do it? We hire people for those reasons as well. And that can be really helpful because I believe, experts expedite the process. So if someone can help you, if they've, like I've helped so many other entrepreneurs grow their businesses in a way that feels good to them. So now I can help you do it faster maybe than you would have before, right? And the same with you with SEO, like that applies there. But really understanding that everyone's journey is unique to them. And so with the clients that I see that have had the most success are the ones that have been willing time and time again to pivot and then to let go of things that are no longer serving them, things that are no longer working. And so really there's not this attachment there. And when I see clients get stuck, or even with my own business, when I find myself like getting stuck or getting down, let's say you hit a slow season, and you're like, what I'm doing just isn't working for this season maybe, or just in general, things have changed, like that's natural. And then being so afraid or unwilling or hesitant to let go of what isn't working, to try something new and just to make space for it, like to make space for the new opportunity. So I have an equestrian client, and she's been in business now, probably close to a decade, like 10 years. And when we started, she was just a body worker. So equestrians will know body working. She massaged horses. So she worked on the body of the horse. And she came to me and she said, I know this isn't sustainable for my, like physically, this is not sustainable for the rest of my life. Like I can't retire doing this in 25 years. And so we had to figure out a way to introduce new revenue streams. She wasn't ready to give up massage, but she wanted to start introducing new revenue streams. So that wasn't her only source of income. And if you fast forward, we've been working together for 5 years, and she just, well, there's an announcement coming, but anyway, she has been offered, because of the pivots that we made, she started experimenting with workshops and clinics and getting her name out there as a leader in her industry. So then she had interns, and now she has employees, and so it's just grown in so many ways. And she launched a rehabilitation center locally. And
Wow.
Yeah. And then that was so successful, they actually had to close it because it grew so quickly. And it did so well that they could no longer handle the demand. So then they pivoted and they took it on the road, and they brought rehab to people who maybe couldn't ship their horse, or, just various reasons. And then that turned into a consulting gig, because now she had all this experience building an equestrian rehabilitation center. And not only that, but using a very specific piece of rehab equipment. And the company who makes that equipment then brought her on as a consultant to help close sales deals.
Wow.
And because of the experience. And then not only that, once the other customers had bought this equipment, they were willing to say, hey, you can call her if you want a consultant to come in and help you set up your business model. So then she was consulting on these larger gigs, and it's evolved into something more, and that will be coming in soon. But so when I was telling her, I just met with her the other day, like watching her journey has been so inspiring, because she has been met with so much adversity, so many reasons why she should have quit, or she should be down on herself, or, all of these things. And at every single like down point, she was like, okay, where's the opportunity? What do we need to let go of? Where and how can we move forward? What's best for me? What's best for my team? What's best for my family? She has 2 young kids. And it's important that she's there to take them to school and to pick them up, and so and what's best for her audience, and really meeting her audience where they are. And her audience isn't online. So she's really not been on social media that much, as of late, especially. But all of these conversations and all of these connections, they're happening in person in real time. And so just really understanding your industry too is helpful. But like to a point, at some point you kind of had to put the blinders on and just do your own thing, because I think your industry can also be limiting sometimes. So again, like not comparing, I think is probably the hardest part.
Yeah, for sure. What a great example of just like, you never know what that next baby step is going to bring you. And like, I think in order, like this whole thing is like simplifying your online business marketing. To simplify, you have to keep willing to simplify. And in order to keep simplifying things, it's what, like Marie Kondo, it's like you have to pick something up. How does this make me feel? And then you can put it down. So you keep it or you get rid of it. But I think that the juice here, bringing in resiliency, is like, are you willing to keep doing that? Are you willing to keep simplifying over and over and over and over again? And that's where the experiment comes in. Scientists don't just throw things into a beaker and like never come in and check on it. Or it's not like they just like do one experiment once and then that's their hypothesis, or what, I don't even know the scientific words, but like that's not their like results or whatever they found from the experiment. They have to keep doing it. And like every time that they do it, every baby step that they take, they're able to get a clearer and clearer result, which then allows them to figure out like what's actually happening. And it's like, we're allowing ourselves to gather data to then keep moving forward and just keep collecting data. But what I did want to kind of explore for a second here, you did mention something about like the hardest part about marketing as a business owner. You mentioned about like not realizing the season that you're in. So we mentioned at the beginning of this that like summer, especially in the online business space, tends to be a little bit slower, especially because like people have kids at home. And I mean, everybody's out here trying to enjoy the sun. So if you had to give people advice in terms of marketing their business, what can they focus on when business is slow? Because I feel like as an online business owner, so often we're like beating ourselves up. We like don't even think about the season. Instead, we take the results so personally of just like, oh man, like sales are down. This is down. Nobody's paying attention. My reach is really off and blah, 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 blah. So like, what can we focus on when things are slow?
Oh my gosh, it's such a good question. So I have a client who we've been working together for a few years, and she's really diligent about tracking her numbers. And something I like to have clients do is start to understand their rhythm, the rhythms of their business. So when are their slow seasons? For most people, summertime is going to be a slower season. And so it's like January, February, especially if you have a retail business. Now that's not true for online, and that's not true for the equestrian world either. So really is understanding your industry and then understanding your own business. And so we tracked her numbers and we did all of this. And at the end of last year, so in January, we were evaluating last year's numbers, and we were looking at everything quarterly, and we just kept breaking it into these quarterly chunks. And then when we started to look at her best months and her slowest months, a pattern emerged, and it was trimesters instead of quarters. And we were like, oh my gosh.
Wow. We never hear people talk about it like that.
Yes. So we had just been like forcing her business into, like a square peg in a round hole or whatever, into quarters. And when we objectively looked at the patterns of her numbers and her business, it was very clear that the second third of the year was just slower. And so this was her first year. We put a strategy together, like a high level strategy for trimesters. And what that did I mean, just the mindset shift that occurred within her, like the sense of confidence, the sense of peace, and because she now could expect, like, okay, when I hit what is it, April? Yeah. Yeah, April, like at the end of April, I know things are gonna slow down. So she goes hard January to April, and that works well for the service business that she has. And then from like May to August, she's able to slow down, and she had planned to take July almost entirely off this year. And she was able to set that expectation with her husband, with her family, with her kids, with their childcare schedule for the summer, with all of the workshops she had planned. Because what was happening before is like she would try to schedule workshops in those months and then inevitably cancel them due to low turnout. And so then she's beating herself up, and then she's worried about income. And then, the shame cycle ensues for the summer, which really ruins your summer if you're stressed about all of these things. And so she built up this ramp in the beginning of the year, and it was the mindset just shift and the planning, and she executed flawlessly, but she surpassed her income goal for the first trimester, which gave her even more peace of mind heading into the slower second trimester. And then now, as she's kind of coming out of that, planning for the end of the year, she knows exactly what she needs to do and what targets she has in terms of sales and marketing activities, and like the workshop she's putting on the calendar, all of those things. So it's such a peace of mind. And so if you're in a slow state right now and you're feeling down, I would suggest a couple of things. Shorten your business hours if you can, because I feel like there's just so much busy work being done. So people feel like they're
in
working.
a physical business or like an online business too?
Both. Like if you have an online business and you find like, well, I just don't have as many client meetings, so maybe I just don't need to be on my laptop as much. Like I can get done what I need to get done marketing wise in like, let's say 2 to 3 hours a day. And then if you don't have client meetings or, anything else on the calendar, it's okay. Like go outside, go to the pool.
Shift takes a while, man.
Yes.
It's so funny because like I didn't even come from the corporate world,
Mm-hmm.
and I still am like more so now, but like 3 years ago, man, it was like, no, these are my working hours. What do you mean?
Yes. Yes. And people, it's good to have working hours because it forces you to show up. But at the same time, if you're in a slow season, do you really need to show up for the same amount of time? And or are you just showing up and like creating busy work that's not actually moving the needle forward or not fun, And so
I can do that. I can fill up my entire week. I might not have any. Oh man, I can fill up my entire week. I can plan so many things. I can design so many things in Canva, create so many PDFs, and plan out so many workshops.
Yeah. Or you could just go for a hike in the mountains behind your house.
Exactly.
When what's going to be more inspiring for you, during the summertime. And I think that's what we have to, like, inspiration for business can come anywhere. Like you can, like, I love going outside and just watering the flowers or, and putting those limits on my business, especially in the summertime, helps me focus better. So I'm like, oh, okay, if I do these 2 to 3 hours of work or, these priorities and I knock them out, then I'm good. Like I can go to the pool, I can lay outside and read, and so it's allowing yourself to like break out of that corporate construct, because even though Mariah didn't come from the corporate world, you still have it. Like it's still instilled in us because that's how school is. It's that 8-hour regimen. And so there's that, but then also now's a great time to experiment, to connect with your audience in other ways, like all of the ways that we were talking about that are not business related. Yeah. Not working. What are your kids up to? Like, what are you doing this summer? So it's just a good way to like casually connect, maybe get involved in your local community, like networking events, volunteer opportunities. There are just so many other ways. But if you're forcing yourself to stay in your studio or your workshop or your office on your laptop to do busy work, then you're missing out on all of these other creative opportunities. And so I think it really can be, so that client I was telling you about, every summer she would hit a slow season, but she also she's one of those, she likes to stay busy. And so she decided,
I can relate.
Yes. And I like that too, but she had decided like we needed to give her full permission. Like you don't have to work on the business during this time. take the time off, go to the lake house with your family. And she decided to paint the inside of her entire house, like every room. She gave a fresh coat of paint. And then the next meeting after that summer was the meeting she told me she had the idea to open the rehabilitation center. And not only did she have the idea, she had it all like mentally mapped out. She had already talked to a friend who was going to invest as a business partner, and so it was because she gave herself the downtime. And because she gave herself the creative space of like, I'm just going to paint my whole house. This is kind of like a flow activity that I don't really have to focus on, that she opened up her mind, like in her imagination, to what could this look like? What do I want to do next? And so I think it's so easy to kind of let the summer months like pass you by in a stress or guilt or shame or busy work type of season. But really, you should be out there enjoying the summer months and seeing what comes to you in that downtime.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, like you said, it's a slow season is really great for rest, for play. And I think it's really great for like self-reflection, because in busy times, it's like so often we're just stuck in like the day-to-day cycle. Like, I'm doing this, I have this schedule, then I'm doing this. But it's like, if you do that for too long without allowing yourself to self-reflect, you're going to look back and be like, crap, how did I get here? Like, how did I get here? I'm no longer aligned with my business. And like on the Curiously Guided podcast, we talk all of the time about how it's like your business needs to evolve as you evolve. Like when you, like I started my business, it's been 8 years. My business looks nothing like it does when I first started. And I think that it's so important to be able to take that time to be able to self-reflect and do all of that. And I think that there's another piece of this where it's like, if it's a slow season and you haven't planned for a slow season, or if it's like, if you're in that, oh crap, I have to pay my bills thing, I think that there's another layer where it's like, rest. You want me to rest? You want me to self-reflect? Like, I'm losing my marbles over here. And like, we've all been there, the emotional and financial roller coaster of being an online business. Know that you are not alone. Know that like the income dips and like the highs and the lows and everything, like regardless of what you're seeing in the online space, it is normal for that stuff to happen. And I think it's also normal to like find, if it's a slow season and you need money, I think it's fine to like find other ways to make money. Like, you don't have to put all of this pressure on your business or like force yourself to show up on Instagram reels, hoping that a reel is going to go viral so that you can sell this thing so you could pay your rent. Instead, it's like, can we explore other income streams that can support us during this slow time? And I think that that's really important to kind of bring into context too.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's huge. And I'm so glad you brought up that point, because the stress is real in those instances. And it's almost, there can be a desperation if you have to pay your bills or you're responsible for.
Rightfully so.
Yes, totally. And so going back to the connection is like, how do we make sure that our target audience doesn't feel that sense of desperation? Because when they feel that, that's a turnoff for them, right? Because are we making our problems their problems? And I have had clients do this before, where it's like, well, I have to sell these things. I just can't believe, I had a consult earlier this year, and it was with someone in the wedding industry, and she was so frustrated that her clients were booking in fast enough. And I said, would you be this frustrated any other time except for this one, when things are slow and you need the income? And she was like, well, no, of course not. And so it's like being really cognizant of where you're putting that pressure on your customer, or where you're judging them maybe incorrectly, where you're like really judging yourself for being in that situation.
It builds resentment. And then the easiest place for that resentment to come out is outwardly on the client. When you feel resentful, then it just, that energy trickles into your marketing, and then the marketing feels sticky, the marketing feels intense, and then for you, it doesn't feel fun anymore.
Yes, and the judgment of your client blocks connection, because you've already judged them for
Way
whatever.
to circle that back.
Yeah. Because it is that full. And once people start to understand, so it's like, okay, we're looking in the wrong places then. If you need a cash infusion or you need income stability. Maybe it's a part-time job for the summertime. Maybe it is, like you said, there are so many other revenue streams and some of them take time to set up. So it's understanding and setting realistic expectations there too. But what else can you explore? Like if you feel like you've been, I didn't want to use that analogy, like hammering your point home and it's not working, then what other options are there to explore? Are there digital products? Is there a workshop you can host online or offline? Is there a small part-time job? Are there other like consulting gigs? I have a client, she is always impressing me with her ability to create income and opportunities in the most, I don't want to say unusual, but the interesting ways, things that are not like, I feel like in the online space, especially, we get put into this box of like, okay, this is your business and these are your offers and there's no negotiating and there's no changing the offers until you test all these things out. And that may work well and fine to get you consistent. But when you hit these patches of slow season or stagnancy or create it, like you're just in a creative rut, you need to mix things up. And so she's always been one to just kind of like negotiate, seek opportunity, and then she just kind of wiggles her way in there. And next thing you know, she's like COO to a CEO who's not only mentoring her but like priming her to take over the company. And you're like, wait, how did you even get here? Like, and it was just this little series of like connections and yeses and being open to the opportunity. And so if you have an inkling or a feeling like, I don't know, I had a client the other day, was like, I want to tell you something. I feel embarrassed to even tell you this because it sounds so stupid when I say it out loud, but I'm going to tell you. And it was such a good idea for this slow season of life. And I was like, yeah, do that. And she said, okay, so I'll start offering these for free next week. And I'm like, no, remember, income. That's why we need these new ideas. Income. And she's like, okay, so I can charge for this, but I've never done it before. I'm like, sure, yeah, charge, experiment. And so it's taking the pressure off. And she's like, but I'm just a maker. Who's going to pay me to talk about the business? And I said, right. But so she quit her job. And so she's full-time in her business. That's what people are paying her for. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
How are you doing it, especially during a slow season? And so I think there's so many ways and we just stop ourselves. I forget. I couldn't tie that back to the question. I lost it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think that it just brings up a good point that we can kind of wrap up here with is that like we underestimate our skills, especially being in the online business space. We underestimate how many things we have to learn in order to run a successful business. So if you're in the slow season or things feel hard or you feel frustrated, self-reflect, get curious. Where can you simplify? Start looking at other industries to get some ideas and stuff like that. But I think that I forgot where I was going with that. But
what was our original? I think it was like how to make the most of the downtime and the creativity and something along those lines.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I lost my train of thought. But basically, I just think that we forget how many skills that we accumulate, like just being an online business owner. And so I'm reminded of this, like my boyfriend Andrew, okay, like I was just reminded of this the other day. He was using his computer and I was like, okay, you have to delete that thing on your computer. He did not drag the thing to the trash can. He had to right click, then click move to trash. And I just started like laughing out loud. And I'm just like, I guess I forget how much stuff that I know because to me, I'm just like, duh, this is what you do. So that's what we were getting at. Basically, if you're in a slow season, remember the skills that you've accumulated. If you're feeling frustrated with your marketing, I think that it comes back to like, how do you want to market? How do you want to connect with people? I feel like we've gone through so many like little golden nuggets of inspiration and really good tips. Do you have anything else that you kind of want to wrap this up with?
Yeah, I think just remembering that you started your business and sometimes it can feel like there's so much pressure on this business for it to succeed, or I just find people have like so much shame and guilt around where they think they should be at a certain point, or comparing themselves to where other people should be. And really, it's just a reminder that you get to create it however you want to create it. And if that means taking the summers off, if that means, experimenting with new products in the summertime, if that means being a multi-passionate entrepreneur or a multi-hyphenate entrepreneur and adding different revenue streams, like, you can do all of that. And it just comes back to how you're connecting with your audience and how you're showing up to tell people about those things. So people can't find you if you're not talking about it, if you're not letting them know who you are and what you do and how you help them. And so it's just in reminding yourself that, like, no one is seeing anyone's content 24/7. And so you literally cannot talk about it enough. Like the board event I have tonight, they're promoting an event in July, and I know ticket sales are slow, but I went and looked at their social media, and I think they've posted it like twice in the past few months,
We need more than that, people. Like, you need to keep reminding
Yes,
me.
you have to really hammer it home for people to take action. And then, and so maybe that feels exhausting during this time of year, during the summertime, but it can be as quick as getting on stories, repurposing content, which is a whole other episode, but just reminding it doesn't have to be that simple, and that anyone that you see as successful doesn't have it all figured out either. Like, these people don't have some cookie cutter strategy template for success. They just have been willing to experiment along the way and to stick with that.
I said, do you have one more thing? And you went off with like 75 different things.
Yeah.
No, I think that it's great. We're ending this bad boy with a bang. So if you just want to give people just like some links, like if they wanted to learn more about you, like what do you got going on?
Yes. So I have a podcast called the Marketing for the Uninhibited Podcast, which you can find on my website or wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Oh, look at that beautiful banner.
I made a banner.
So marketinguninhibited.com is where you can learn more about me, beautiful, and the podcast. And then you can DM me or chat with me, connect with me on Instagram at marketinguninhibited.
Okay, perfect. I will put all of those wonderful things into the video description below this YouTube video. This was such a blast. I just want to thank Miranda again for coming on and chatting with me all about simplifying your online business marketing. And then don't forget about our sponsor of this interview, of this episode. I don't even know what I'm going to call them yet, but the Curiously Guided Podcast for intuitive business owners and curious minds. So you can learn more about the podcast over at mariahmagazine.com/CG. And if you haven't already hopped over to my website, mariahmagazine.com, where I have DIY everything, like workshops and digital products and all of that. You can learn more about working with me on your SEO strategy or whatever you're feeling called to explore. But I think that is it for this interview. I'm going to go ahead and close it down, and I will see you in the next interview.